can hear on the airwaves. It's that WBOK 12:30 a.m.
From the campus of Xavier University, WBOK Go, an Equity Media Station.
I'm Bree Wood with BIN News Now. Black House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries warned Republicans they'll regret reopening the January 6th probe.
Donald Trump and House Republicans are now determined to whitewash that day that will always live in infamy.
Jeffries tapped Eric Swalwell to lead Democrats on the new subcommittee, joined by Jasmine Crockett and Jared Moskowitz. The black man seen in a viral Jacksonville, Florida traffic stop video is suing the city and the arresting officer. Will McNeil Jr.'s lawyers also want a DOJ investigation after video showed him punched and dragged from his car during the February stop. And Joe Budden is on a potential witness list in Megan Thee Stallion's upcoming defamation trial. Blogger Milagro Grams faces claims she spread false stories during Tory Lanez 2022 case. The trial begins November 17th. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
The following is a paid program and does not necessarily express the views or opinions of Equity Media, its management, staff, or affiliates of WBOK.
Now, it's the Monitor's Mic with your host, Stella Cement.
Welcome to the Monitor's Mic, where we talk oversight, policing, and you. I'm Stella Cement, your host and the Independent Police Monitor for the City of New Orleans, and with me is Chriselle Williams, our Deputy Police Monitor. We, your hosts, are not police officers, but we are experienced attorneys from the criminal legal field dedicated to transparency and accountability. This show is your go-to source for discussing policing, law enforcement oversight, and how it all impacts you. From the Office of the Independent Police Monitor, we offer an independent perspective on city government. The Office of the Independent Police Monitor, OIPM, serves as a crucial civilian oversight body for the New Orleans Police Department, the NOPD. We ensure transparency and accountability within the police department by making sure the NOPD follows their policies, abides by the consent decree and the sustainment strategy, and is compliant with all local, state, and federal laws. Our office operates independently from the NOPD and from the federal monitors. What do we do day to day? We take complaints of officer misconduct from the public and from police officers. We review misconduct investigations conducted by the NOPD's Internal Affairs, which is called the Public Integrity Bureau. We're on call 24 hours a day, every day of the year for officer-involved shootings and critical incidents, and we will go to the scene and monitor the force investigation from start to finish. We're advisory members of the Use of Force Review Board and the disciplinary hearings, and we run the Community Police Mediation Program. We engage the community to ensure your voice, opinions, and concerns are heard. This summer, the OIPM launched the 24-hour hotline for complaints of officer misconduct or for accounts of positive policing. This 24-hour hotline is operational every day of the year. The hotline is available in English, Spanish, and Vietnamese. No matter how you reach the hotline, and you can reach it via phone call or text message, you have the option to file completely anonymously through that platform, and you will be given a unique tracking number. Again, you can reach the hotline through calling or texting, and the number is 1-877-225-6476. For our show today, we encourage you to call in with your questions, comments, and concerns. You can reach us on air here at WBOK at 504-582-9422. While we may not be able to address any individual cases that you call about, we are committed to following up with you. So with that, let's learn more about today's guest. I'm very excited. Chriselle?
Today, we are so pleased to welcome former NOPD Superintendent Chief Warren Riley. Chief Warren Riley is a law enforcement and emergency management executive with over 40 years of service. He retired as superintendent of the NOPD in 2010 after 5 years of leading the city's post-Katrina recovery, focusing on rebuilding infrastructure, reducing crime, and revitalizing recruitment. Following his retirement, Raleigh was recruited by the U.S. State Department to assess the Haitian National Police after the 2010 earthquake and served as an advisor on flood management in Prague. From 2011 to 2018, he worked as a federal coordinating officer with FEMA, leading response and recovery efforts for 17 presidentially declared disasters. He holds FBI secret and Department of Homeland Security top secret security clearances. Raleigh is currently the Director of Policing, Crisis, and Emergency Management at Delgado Community College, overseeing safety for the main campus and 3 satellite campuses. He holds a Bachelor of Science and a Master of Arts degree in Criminal Justice from Southern University of New Orleans. He is a graduate of the FBI National Executive Institute and the Senior Management Institute for Policing, and has taught as an adjunct professor of criminal justice. That is an impressive resume.
Very
Riley.
impressive. And if anyone is listening and they have questions for Chief Riley, and we are going to be calling him Chief Riley during the show, please call 504-582-9422 because we would love to hear from you, and I'm sure he would too.
So, Chief Riley, you famously became the NOPD chief of NOPD in the wake of Hurricane Katrina, and you were the superintendent after Chief Compass, who ran NOPD during the storm. At this point, what was the city and the department like? Can you give us a little bit of context of how it was stepping into that role after Katrina?
Well, obviously, New Orleans was overwhelmed by the catastrophic events from Hurricane Katrina. So when Hurricane Katrina made landfall, I was the chief of operations. So I was running the field operations as a number 2 person within NOPD. And so what it was like, let me say it was about 3 days before Hurricane Katrina made landfall, when Max Mayfield, who was over the National Weather Service, contacted Mayor Nagin and advised that this could possibly be a Category 5 hurricane and that New Orleans would suffer severely and could actually be destroyed.
Wow.
So that certainly became a very frightening situation where we certainly began to upgrade our preparedness. Although we were preparing for it, we brought it to a whole another level. When the storm hit, to listen in and hear the callers calling in, asking for help, to see the 911 operators crying, hitting pause buttons while people were telling them that someone in their family had drowned or someone was blown off the roof or they were stuck in their attics and they couldn't get out. And to listen into some of those communications, it was a horrible, horrible situation to hear New Orleanians who had no choice. And this was going to go on for the next 6 or 7 hours. So to be a chief during that time, to listen in from communications, there wasn't a person that didn't cry at some point, right? Because we heard the tragedy occurring. We heard the fear in everybody's voice. And then in the aftermath, when it finally, when the wind subsided, then we go out and it's not flooding and we're driving, we see the wind damage and so forth. But as the day go on, everywhere we went, we saw water rising. So even though it was over, it wasn't over.
Right. It was just actually beginning in some ways.
Correct. So the flooding would now continue for the next couple of days, where when we went out at 2:33 that evening, where the waters were, there maybe was a foot of water. By 8 o'clock that night, some areas we went back to were now 3 or 4 feet of water. We didn't understand at that time the levees had breached.
Right.
We didn't know where this water was coming. So we didn't know that this horrific event wasn't over. It continued for the next 2 or 3 days until the water rose to a point where it was level with Lake Pontchartrain, where it no longer rose anymore. So the problems continued. So to be here at that time, it was a horrific experience. one that where you just stayed focused on being a first responder, but one that the level of this tragedy, regardless of how we prepared, the wrath of Mother Nature, I don't know that you can ever be totally prepared for.
So what do you think were the biggest challenges facing you as the superintendent of police when you took over in September 2005?
hmm Well, the recovery. I mean, we had a number of challenging issues. The city, for the most part, was abandoned. We had to work on the reentry program of people coming back to the city, how that would happen. Working with other city leaders on what areas were safe to come back to. Then you had people that wanted to come back just to see what happened. So those were major challenges that we had. The fact that we didn't have lights for almost real power and lights and utilities for almost 21 days on the East Bank of New Orleans. The West Bank was up much sooner. So not having power, not having restaurants, having to have food and water shipped in. It took a while before any restaurants were up and running. Still discovering people who had passed, whether it was from drowning or from, I believe a lot of elderly people who were at the convention center and other places succumbed to the heat. I realized this was also 90 plus degree heat in New Orleans. So you had the heat, the humidity. EPA did not, in fact, clear us to drink water or use water for a couple of weeks because they didn't know if it was contaminated.
Oh my
So
gosh.
it wasn't potable. So at one point, we weren't sure if we could shower in it or not. So one of the first baths that some of us had, we were in the French Quarter, and it's now the W Hotel. I think it was some other hotel in the French Quarter back then. And we walked in and we're trying to find a place to stay. And this is like 24, maybe 48 hours after the storm. And everybody kind of jumped in the swimming pool because there was chlorine, right?
Oh, right.
So everybody kind of just jumped in the swimming pool because we didn't know. So the challenges, then we had, once the phones came back up, I was getting phone calls. I was a member of the International Association of Chiefs of Police, the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives. Law enforcement agencies were contacting them. They were calling me on my phone. One, if we needed, what kind of support we needed. But then we started getting calls about they've stopped police cars with NOPD officers in Memphis, Arkansas, Texas, and a number of places who were abandoning the city.
What's the significance of that? Can you take our listeners into why that would be a big deal as a chief to receive calls like that?
Because our job was to stand up, be here for the citizens of New Orleans. Some officers, either they couldn't handle the stress. Some of them, they went looking for their families, right? They couldn't communicate with their families. Some of them were basically, they were cowards, for lack of a better term. They fled the city. The fact that they took an NOPD vehicle that we clearly could have used because we had a number of vehicles that were destroyed. And that the embarrassment that comes with that, when you have other law enforcement agencies calling you saying we've stopped a number of officers who are fleeing your city. So my direction to those officers was to take their police credentials, take the car, let them go, and we would deal with them later. And ultimately we did. We did end up firing about 80, 90 officers and suspending another 60 or 70, depending on how long they were gone. So that was another challenge. We had the Superdome. Let me back up a little bit. When General Honoré came in, the Superdome was full of people. The roof was breached. There was no heat, no air in the convention center. We couldn't get people out. So when General Honoré came in, he met with us and we told him what our priorities were. One was food and water for the people in the Superdome and the convention center, and to get them out of New Orleans into a place where they could have hot shower, a bed, somewhere. And when he came in, General Honoré asked us, what do you need us to do? Right. And one of his comments, which was really profound, was simply that we would be amazed at what his army could do. Just tell us.
Yeah.
And we'll get it done. And we did, and he got it done. So it was phenomenal on the resources. Food started coming in. Some of it was from the ship. Some of it was MREs. Things began to happen when he came in. understand we barely had communication,
Yeah.
right? We were a struggling police department, and obviously General Honoré and the military, they're trained for all sorts of things. That's when we saw a little bit of light, right, where we could breathe a little bit.
Yeah.
So, but again, I don't think that there's anything that you can ever be prepared for that will totally give you the capabilities to deal with Mother Nature if its wrath is at its highest.
Right.
You're going to succumb. You may survive, but you're going to have some real issues to deal with, no matter how well prepared you are.
I got to ask, becoming a chief, a superintendent of police, I'm sure is a dream for a lot of officers. And it's probably something that you wanted for a long time. And I know you did try to get the chief position when Eddie Compass was originally appointed to chief by Ray Nagin, the then mayor of New Orleans. And to finally get appointed chief in September of 2005, take us inside of your mind. What did that feel like? Because it's like you're getting a gift, but you're getting this thing that you've wanted for so long, but you're getting it at such a horrible time for this city. That must have felt like a mixed blessing. Or was there any part of you that thought about saying, you know what? No, I don't want it right now. This is too much.
No, at no point. I did apply for superintendent of police and finished in the final four, and ultimately was a deputy chief, and then became a chief in the midst of Hurricane Katrina. If you're serious about being a chief and you're number two, you know that if number one goes down, it's your job, right? But as a chief of operations, the chief of operations is really running the most of everything anyway, most of it. The chief is heavily involved, and he approves a lot of what you do. So, but at no time did I think, what am I getting into? Because I was actually heavily involved in running the operations in the midst of that anyway. So it was really keep on doing what we were doing, keep on trying to motivate people, continue to work with the partners that came in, continue to work with the FEMA reps, and just continue to do all that we could do. We knew we did not have the resources available. I mean, we had 2 boats when the storm hit. We had only 2 boats, right? We had no high water vehicles, right? So thank God for the National Guard coming in.
Right.
A lot of officers use their own boats to rescue people. So in the midst of that, you're just focused on doing what you can, and situations evolved every few hours. You heard something new, you learned something new that you had to address, or you had to send someone to address. We had no radio communication, right? So when you sent someone to another part of the city, we had no way to communicate. So you call a staff meeting, everybody knows we're going to meet here under this, under the Harris overhang at 2 p.m. So those commanders had to come back in every day for 2 p.m. Some could get back. Sometime the flooding areas changed. They couldn't get in. But it was sort of like being in the Wild Wild West when you had the Pony Express.
Right.
People had to come, it literally had to come to communicate.
Yeah.
So there were times when you didn't get any information for 2 or 3 days, right? Because we didn't have boats. The flooding continued. They couldn't drive. So it was one of the most horrific experiences and most challenging experiences anyone could have in a leadership position, where you have no comms, no communication. And with that, I don't care how big your force is, if you're in the military, how big your army is, if you don't have communications with your colleagues, it makes it very, very, very difficult.
So, Chief Warren, you talked about, the emotional turmoil that people were experiencing, as well as the physical turmoil of the flooding and everything that was going on in the city after Katrina. But you were in leadership. So what would you think in handling a magnitude, a disaster of this magnitude, are the most important qualities that a person can have in leadership during a storm like this?
Being focused, the ability to assess situations and information quickly as you receive it, the ability to command the respect of the men and women who serve under you, the ability to give guidance, but also to show compassion, but also to reprimand. So it's a gamut of things that and qualities that you have to have in order to be successful, especially in a situation that was constantly evolving. So, and you have to make very quick decisions, and you make the best decision that you can. You follow the rules, the laws, the policies, and you get things done. As long as you don't abandon those things, you're in good shape.
So there was some criticism of your leadership, and I just want to jump in here about rules and laws, about the handling of Danziger Bridge and other scandals that did come up during the NOPD in the immediate aftermath of Hurricane Katrina. What do you think of that criticism?
What's the criticism?
Well, it wouldn't necessarily be of maybe you, but of the department, that NOPD officers were effectively not following the law, and that some of them cracked under pressure or used this opportunity to act badly. And we had officers who were accused of firing at unarmed civilians, killing unarmed civilians. But then when there were investigations into that afterwards, planting evidence and purposefully obstructing the investigations that had to follow. And all of that happened while you were effectively chief of the NOPD.
Well,
how do you feel
what
about
I'll say
those
about
things?
that is, first of all, I didn't raise any of those officers. None of my kids have ever been in trouble. I'm going to say that. And secondly, if incidents happen with police officers, whether they make a mistake, whether they go rogue, whether they, whatever they do, happens on a daily basis in this country, right? So for officers to abandon their training, that's on them.
Okay.
Those people were adjudicated. Some of them went to jail. Whatever criticism that is that you're talking about, not one time did you ever hear that Warren Riley was under investigation, that Warren Riley was a part of any of that type of stuff, because he wasn't. And just for the record, I was a strong disciplinarian. I fired more police officers than any chief in the history of the New Orleans Police Department, because I was about ensuring that we were a professional organization. So I got a lot of criticism from within the police department because I was about policies and procedures and doing the right thing. So I feel bad for those people who suffered at the hands of those officers. But, you know, you have a doctor that graduated from Harvard and his wife graduated from Howard, and they have 5 kids. One's a doctor, one's a lawyer, one's an engineer, one's a drug dealer, and the other's a crackhead. What did those 2 people do wrong with those 5? Why did 3 become great and 2 become problems? That's life. So if you can't have 5 kids, how are you going to ensure that 1,600 people all do the right thing all the time?
So what do you think it is that people get wrong whenever they talk about policing that occurred during Hurricane Katrina and immediately afterwards?
Well, you know, everybody has their own opinion. I mean, we have a society that's built on independents, Democrats, and Republicans right now who don't agree on anything. So people have their own opinions. They have their own beliefs. How those beliefs come about and why they believe what they believe and how it's structured within their mind is based on that individual and their experiences. You can't there's not an answer that can that would make sense that where everybody's on the same page. It's just that's how society is. That's how society is. I just don't. People are individual. I mean, you know, some people are Baptist, some are Catholic.
Right.
Yeah.
So we'll all have different takeaways maybe from that time in history. And speaking of, I will say that you did correct a lot of records and also provide an institutional memory from that
Mhm.
time by writing the book that you wrote, which is called Inside the Eye, Hurricane
Mhm.
Katrina, as told by retired NOPD Superintendent Warren J. Riley.
Mhm.
And I read this book. I'm going to hold it up for the camera over there. And you wrote this book about your time predominantly as the deputy chief of operations, so the chief of operations
Mhm.
during Hurricane Katrina and the immediate aftermath of the storm. So it didn't cover any of the time that you were actually running the NOPD as superintendent,
Correct.
but it was about your time as the deputy chief. You wrote it and it was released last year.
Mhm.
Why now? Why did you decide to write this book now?
Well, I began the research, honestly, probably around before I retired, actually, probably around 2008 or 2009. I retired in 2010. So I began doing the research then. I began interviewing some officers and so forth because, the 5 years after, Katrina was still in the conversations on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
So officers will come up to me and say, Chief, during Katrina, remember this happened, or they would bring it up to me. And so I started writing notes. So at some point around 2008 or 9, I said, you know what, I really need to write a book because people need to understand the inside story because so many people will come to me and talk about their experiences. And I thought that people needed to have an understanding of what it was on the inside,
Yes.
being a member of NOPD, being those. So within that book, you have stories on people who were caught, who were stuck in their attics, right? There's a little bit about the politics that went along with it. How, for some people who are wealthy, where money meant more than the safety of citizens, right?
And I want to just be clear about that. You're talking about some of the conversations that you witnessed where business leaders were putting pressure on Mayor Nagin, right, to not evacuate the city, and that there was a lot of money at stake around evacuation decisions.
I overheard the conversation. I went into an office to prepare because Chief Coppers asked me to do the briefing. Right, this is probably 4 or 5 days before the storm to do the briefing to the staff. And then we're in City Hall, and I go into an office, and then next door I can hear two gentlemen, and then ultimately I learned that they were talking to the mayor, and they were really about the mayor not calling an evacuation 4 days out, right? And there was some harsh words that were exchanged. The mayor stayed very collective and calm, but they were not in favor. I'll say that. You can read the book to find out the details.
Yes, and I would highly recommend that you do
You
because
know.
it's fascinating. You
Right.
took us into rooms
Mm-hmm.
that I think a lot of us have never gotten a chance to be in,
Mm-hmm.
and you did give us an inside view into these conversations because it sounds
Mhm.
like there was a lot of pressure
To not call a mandatory
to
evacuation
not
sooner.
call that evacuation sooner.
Mm-hmm.
What was that like hearing that conversation, hearing what the mayor was going through?
I didn't know who the people were. I did later learn who they were, but it just showed me the selfishness of some people, where money matters more than anything, and I thought that was unfortunate. I thought it was sad. I admired Mayor Nagin for his collectiveness during that period. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't lose his cool or anything like that. But it astounded me that individuals would be focused on people staying and going by these goods, these last minute goods and supplies versus getting people out to be safe. I just thought that was, when in all likelihood, those people were going to go get on their plane and be out of here in a couple of hours.
That's wild to even think about. What do you think the NOPD did really well during Hurricane Katrina?
Oh, listen, we had our Special Operations Division. You mentioned John Roberts earlier, who was phenomenal, and a number of other Special Operations officers and a lot of other officers who went and got their own boats, who went out on their own and were saving people, breaking into roofs, saving people. who were totally heroic in every way. Those who maintained order at the convention center, and one of the most admirable, and I didn't put this in my book because I forgot it, but there was a, and this isn't about police, it's about 3 young black guys by the convention center, and we saw them go into a warehouse, and they came out with garbage can tops and some stuff, and we thought they were looting. And they were stopped and said, man, we're not looting, we're going to cook for people, right? So they went into the warehouse. They had these garbage cans tops. They had sternos. They got food out of the freezer, and they set up a table. They put the sternos under a garbage can top, and they had meat and things like that. And they were and they had seasoning from whatever and they were just grilling food in a garbage can top, a clean garbage can top, a new garbage can top. And people started lining up, and they were like children and old people only, right? And where we originally thought they were looting, they did one of the best things of anyone. And these were those 3 young guys who, disheveled, but everyone was disheveled at that time, who did something phenomenal. So when you see something like that and you compare it to someone who doesn't want a mandatory evacuation, it just perplexes you on the mentality of people, because you have, I don't know these young guys. They clearly were 19, 18, 20, and that they had compassion for people. And they wanted it for kids. And look, I don't think they got to feed 30 people, but they did something.
They did something. Wow. I mean, your book includes a lot of that insider perspective on the heroics and the hardships that people experienced during Hurricane Katrina. Again, it's called Inside the Eye, Hurricane Katrina, as told by retired NOPD Superintendent Warren J. Riley, and it is available at bookstores. And I would highly recommend the read. I want to talk about your transition into power from deputy chief to chief. Specifically, that we highlighted that this happened in September of 2005. But an interesting thing that you disclose in your book is that 6 months prior, you had coffee, you had a meeting with Mayor Nagin at the then Cafe Rose Nicot, and he disclosed that he wanted to remove Chief Compass. And it was pretty apparent that there was tension and disagreement between Mayor Nagin and Chief Compass at that time. Let us in. What was it like to receive that information from your mayor?
Well, I wasn't totally surprised. So if we can back up to after the interview process, and this is before the storm, one of the mayor's best friends, after the interview process, the mayor called me and told me that Eddie Compass was going to be selected, and they were going to announce him in a day. And then he said, but you're going to be a chief. He said, we were impressed with you. So one of the people on the committee brought me to have drinks and said, listen, politics is a mother. He said, you were going to be selected. He said, and what we admired about you is that you didn't have one preacher, politician, or millionaire, billionaire call us on behalf of you to give you a chance. Right? So.
What's the significance of that, though?
Because other people did.
Other people did.
Other people lobbied for the job.
And why might lobbying for the job of superintendent of police be a bad thing?
I'm not saying it's a bad thing.
Yeah.
I said they admired me because I didn't.
You didn't.
Because I didn't. And because I don't like to owe favors.
Okay. Don't like to owe favors. I mean, that is kind of the hidden dark side of those connections, is that people think those connections might work for them in the future. And it's a valuable thing if we're living in a world of connections, to have a connection to the chief of police.
Yeah.
So look, I'm the type of person that will help anybody anyway, right, if I can. But I don't like to have people have stuff to hold over me. That's just me, okay? So I think that I was probably, and only the mayor can answer this for himself, I think I was the number one choice anyway. So, but because of those requests, I I didn't become number one, but the mayor assured me that I would be a chief and so forth. So when we did have this meeting, which was a year or so later, at Cafe Nicole in the French Quarter, the mayor mentioned to me, and I can't remember exactly how long it was, 9 months, a year later, he just had a conversation with me. He said, I like your style, I like your professionalism, I like how you carry yourself, I like how you're focused. Because at this point now, when I was the chief of policy and planning, that was my original appointment, which was a 1-star, the number 4 chief. The number 2 person who was selected by Chief Compass, ultimately it was learned that they did not have a college degree. All right, that their documents were fake. So when
That's
the mayor,
worrisome for someone in the police department.
so when the mayor found out about that, that person was immediately given the option of resigning or being terminated.
Okay.
So at that point, honestly, at that point, Chief Compass had selected someone else, and the mayor advised him, no, that I would be the new number 2. Okay, so I wasn't Eddie's choice to be number 2.
Interesting.
Right. So then I became number 2. So the meeting happened some months after I became number 2 at the coffee shop, and the mayor said, look, I like your style. Well, let me back up again. Every Wednesday morning, Chief Compass and I would meet with the mayor, and we would go over crime stats for the week and what our strategies were moving forward. The mayor was very in tune to, Mayor Nagin was very in tune to the crime. So I would always do the briefing, right? Because I was over operations, I was running everything. And crime was going down. We were headed in the right direction. And so the mayor called me into that cafe, and he said, I like your professionalism, your style, you're always prepared, you're always ready. He said, I'm not happy. And he just honestly said, I'm not happy with the chief. And he said the chief is just very political, but he's not focused.
Can you explain to our listeners what you think the relationship between the chief of police and the mayor should be like?
Oh, I can't. That's all about personalities, chemistry, the business mindset of the mayor. Are you going to allow the chief to run the police department, or are you going to try and dictate? Are you going to pick his executive staff or not? It all depends. And I personally think the chief of police in New Orleans should be elected, personally.
Why?
Because you take out the politics.
But
Look,
isn't
you
that
look at the
literally
sheriff's
putting
office.
in politics by electing them?
Well, you are, but if you look at Jefferson Parish, you look at the sheriff's offices around the state. Those sheriffs run. You don't hear the politics, the controversy, right? You don't hear that. You don't hear the city council beating up on sheriffs other than here. You don't hear that. Those sheriffs hold a lot of power, a lot of authority, a lot of weight. If you don't want them in, they're not doing a job. They're not elected. So I personally think that the police chief in New Orleans, I think it would benefit the city greatly that police chief doesn't have to answer to whoever is in power, who has, and I'm not talking about any particular mayor, who has the mayor ear, right? Because I can tell you, the mayor, when I was chief, the mayor would call and said, this person wants you to do this, and he said you won't do it. And the mayor always supported me. If I didn't have a mayor who supported me, I would have had a different outcome to my career, right? I don't think I would have had the success. Listen, when I left office, we were down 21% in murders, 18% in overall crime. We had an above average homicide clearance rate, right? Even responding to an auto accident was within 30 minutes, right? We had 1,595 officers. I fortunately worked for a mayor who let me be the chief. I don't know that everybody who has been a chief has had that same ability to do that.
So let's talk about that dynamic a little bit more. You're saying it's important for a mayor to let a chief be a chief. But in theory, the mayor is the top of the food chain, right?
But they're not the top law enforcement person in the city.
They are not. So what happens? What happens when the top law enforcement person, the chief, the superintendent of police, disagrees with an order that they receive from the mayor?
You're on your third or fourth police chief in your administration.
How do you rank the differing interests? Like what would be your advice to a police chief about how to navigate the needs of a mayor, the needs of your police department, and the needs of the public? How would you say to rank those things?
Well, that's an individual's choice. The level of integrity that I have, I can only take so much dictatorship, right? And so there are mayors that I clearly would not have been successful under or would have been able to work under. Some chiefs get in those situations and they're just trying to survive for 3 years to lock in their pension. So they might acquiesce for a little while. But then once they lock that in, that other chief's going to come out. If you are in a situation where the mayor is not allowing you that you have prepared for 25 years, and now they just came from whatever to council to chief to mayor, and now they're going to tell you how to run a police department. They're going to pick who are your deputy chiefs because they like them, not because they're qualified. And if you're going to have a staff, now, if that chief is picking people who are unqualified, the mayor certainly has every right to step in, right? But in a sheriff's office, the sheriffs, and whether you go back to Harry Lee, New Norman, the current Sheriff Lapinto, their organizations have always been great. They've been good. I'm just going to be honest. They've had little issues.
Yeah, some of them have been investigated by the
of
Department
course.
of Justice.
I'm not saying. Listen, I'm not saying that. Like I just gave you the example of the 5 kids, 3 are great, 2 are bad. You're going to have bad apples, right? I'm sure you've all had bad apples in your office, right? I'm sure. Even though you have a small group, I'm sure. So that's just my opinion. I think that the city would benefit from a police chief being elected. I just do. Because in 4 years, if the crime isn't down and resources aren't there and you're not answering calls for service and you're not getting to these traffic accidents quickly, even though a private industry has it in New Orleans now, what's going to happen in those 4 years? That person's likely not to be there.
We've talked a lot about what makes a good chief during a disaster or what it's like to be elevated to chief. But talk to us about the other side of the chief experience. It's important to know when to step up, but it's important to know when it's time for the next leader to take over. When do you think a police chief should consider stepping away?
Well, clearly everything is about success. I mean, but it's also about support. So if that police chief has the resources, the majority of the resources that they need, they have a proper training academy, they have a proper budget and equipment, and they're not successful, then that's a leadership question. But if you don't have the support that you need, and you don't have the resources that you need, listen, like I said, New Orleans currently has less than 900 police officers. Right. No knock to NOPD, but Troop NOLA came in and did a phenomenal job assisting NOPD. And New Orleans population certainly has dwindled, but New Orleans needs more than 800 or 900 police officers. You literally have 3 police officers working in some districts right now, and that's not fair to the officers.
So let's talk.
And that's not the police chief. Chief Kirkpatrick is great. She's dealing with what she has, but it should have never dwindled to this level.
So you're saying that that's an organizational challenge now?
I don't know if it's a recruitment issue. I don't know if it's because people no longer want to be the police. I don't know if because they're not focused on it, because I'm not inside to see that. But I do know that if you show up at a roll call at 11 o'clock at night and you have 60 square miles and you got one other person in the roll call and it's just you and that other person, how effective are you really going to be in a city like New Orleans?
So now that you are outside of things, as you said, you no longer have that insider perspective. What do you think, as the former chief, about the direction that NOPD is going in now?
So I think if you go back, I think NOPD has made some strides over the last, year and a half. I think one of the chiefs came in, and I won't mention it because they were running for office. They came in and they shut down those shootings on the interstate, right? Mm-hmm. They had 18, 19 shootings in a 30-month period or something like that on the interstate. That person came in and shut those things down. It was handed off to Chief Kirkpatrick, and every police officer that I've met, and I've met Chief Kirkpatrick, she's a very nice lady. Every officer I've spoke with, they like her. They like her demeanor. They like her professionalism. They think they're headed in the right direction. So clearly it's headed in the right direction. However, how efficient are you going to be in a city like New Orleans when you have 2 or 3 officers in a 30, 40 square mile area? You wouldn't put that on anyone, but that's what's happening.
So do you believe the consent decree was needed?
I think the consent decree was I'm a straightforward person, so
that's why we're hitting all the big questions.
But to a degree, it was. But another portion of it was more political than necessary.
Take us into that.
I can't do that. Sorry.
Okay. That's subject for the next book?
That's yes.
Okay. All right. Do you believe community trust in the NOPD is better or worse now compared to, say, your time?
I think during my tenure, at one point we were when I took over, this was after the Dan Singer.
Right. After Henry Glover, after
the Glover case. Those things dragged on.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And then you had people running for office who used that to infuriate the community.
Right.
Right? So I cannot tell you, I don't know what the numbers were then. Is it higher now? I honestly don't know. Our population is much smaller. Police department is much smaller. They say we're at an all-time low in crime. So I would assume it's better now.
Community trust, you would assume?
I think it probably is a little bit better because the dynamics have changed.
Yeah.
Right? Everything has changed. So I don't know what the poverty level, when I was police chief, 27% of people were living in poverty. That 27% is not ever likely to have a high opinion of. I don't know what the poverty rate is at this point. So I think that plays into, and whether the police department is seen in a positive light or not. Right. You know, what is the middle income here now compared to back then? So if you take the poverty rate, you take the income levels, all of those things play in. I don't know if you can fairly compare today to when I left.
That's fair. I mean, of course, these things, community trust isn't done in a vacuum. I noticed you did not bring up the role of police oversight. So I will ask, do you think police oversight has changed the police department?
Police oversight.
And don't feel like you need to say yes just because we're in the room.
I think the news network and newspaper investigative reporters have been more essential than your office. I'm just going to be honest.
No, we want the honesty. Tell us why.
I think because they put they put it out there. They let the public know. You know, if you go out there and do something wrong, you're going to be on the news. It's going to affect your present, your future, right? It's going to affect your family, right? So if you're just investigating it and your picture's not on the news and nobody knows it, I can maybe get around it.
Right.
But I do think as those investigative journalists are making a difference. Not that I agree with all of them, but I think that makes a major difference. I think that is more oversight than, I'm being honest, than your office.
Yeah, well,
Because your office is small.
our office is small.
Mm-hmm.
Our office is small, and I think what you're showcasing is that both our office and investigative journalism relies on a couple things: transparency, accessibility, but also the public.
Right.
The bedrock is the public. The assumption is that the investigative journalism pieces will be read and will be accepted by the public, and then will result potentially in some type of public action. And if our office is also dependent on the public. It is dependent on public action, because ultimately we do not have the ability to order anything of the NOPD or policing in the city. We're reliant on showing those things to the community and the community making those demands. I mean, that's a really interesting point. That's I'm happy you said that.
And listen, I think those who are in violation should be exposed. However, I don't agree when you throw innocent people out there because you can get somebody else to say it for you. Right? So some people in that industry, if they can get somebody else to say it for them and it's not factual, they will still show it. So in those instances, I think it's unfair. But when you actually have somebody and they've done it and you know it, they need to be exposed. And I think that so for some other officer out there who may be involved or doing something, when they see that, they have to start thinking about it, right? When it goes to your office, it's kind of under the radar.
It can be.
So exposure is the key to influencing those that may choose to do something wrong, to make them think a second, third, fourth time. And how does that not only affect them? Do you go to jail? How does it affect your family? So I think those exposures are very positive and a deterrent. I really do.
Yeah, that's a really, really, really good point. I want us to get reflective in our final moments together. What do you hope people remember about your time as the superintendent of the NOPD?
Oh, wow.
Kind of a legacy question. What do you hope your legacy was?
Look, that I ran a police department based on true professionalism, integrity, honesty, that I held those accountable. I think you can ask almost any cop. Easygoing, I'm a nice guy, but my expectations were that you represent this police department in the best way, that you respect the citizens of New Orleans, and that you do the right thing. My leadership during Katrina, you can ask 90% of the officers. They know who was there, who was doing what, who was motivational. You know, I'm the one that went to the mayor when we had nowhere to stay, because actually of a Captain Harry Mendoza. We were saying, look, people are leaving. We're getting calls that officers are abandoning the city. And somebody said, well, look, the hotels were offering the hotels to us, but they had no heat, so there was mildew, right?
Right,
And
right.
and I believe it was Harry Mendoza in a staff meeting that said, man, we need a cruise ship. Like, cruise ship? I go to the mayor and Terry Everett said, look, we're losing officers, they're leaving, we need a cruise ship. And they're like, how the hell are we going to get a cruise ship? So as it was either, I don't remember if it was the mayor or myself or Terry, someone said FEMA. 10 days later, a cruise ship was put in that. It changed everything.
I bet.
A week later, a second cruise ship came in. So we now, where we didn't have potable water, we weren't sure if we could bathe, we're filthy, right? Some of us who lived on the West Banks, our homes weren't destroyed, but we still didn't know if we could use the water, right? So, and you had officers that had homes that weren't destroyed, that had 20 cops coming over, staying at their homes, sleeping on the floors with blankets. So people have no idea what we really went through. So for me to have, which I will call an opportunity to lead during one of America's greatest disasters, was a privilege for me, right?
Wow.
Because if you want to be a police chief, you want that ultimate challenge, right? So this was sort of the ultimate challenge, right?
Wow.
As unexpected as it was. So, but when I look back on it, it's still a tragedy. Unfortunately, too many people perished. I think we still have 700, 800 people that were never found in the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina.
Oh, I see. I'm sorry. I see we have a caller in our final moment here. Hi. 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 You're on the air. The monitor's mic. Can
Yes, I'm just.
turn
This
down
is
your
Reverend
radio for
Wallace.
a minute so we're not echoing?
Beg your pardon?
If you could turn down your radio, I think that's what's causing
Oh,
the
okay,
echo.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just want to call and commend that young man there for being in a strategic position at the time of the devastation. He did an excellent job. He always showed the professionalism and humanity for the community, and always concerned about the least among us. And I'm glad to say that I'm a friend of his. And I hope and pray one day that this young man can come back to the city and help with some of the stuff we have. He was a great asset to the city and his position, and he did it with class and dignity. So I could say nothing, but he deserved 5 stars on his shoulder.
Thank you so
Thanks
much
a
for
lot. I
calling
appreciate
in.
it. Thank you.
Yeah.
God bless
wow.
you, brother. May the Lord keep you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. And what a moment for
Yeah.
that call while we're talking about
Your
how
legacy.
you hope people will remember you.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, and let me just say, there is nothing. Look, when you take a public position, you're going to get criticism. That
Mhm.
comes with it.
Yes.
There is nothing that I regret. There's nothing that I'm ashamed of. I think my leadership was phenomenal. I understand we lost 400 officers. In my 5 years, we built it back up to 1,595 officers with a goal of 1,600, and we had 55 in the academy. What is unfortunate is that following administration decided that the police department didn't need 1,600. New Orleans still needs 1,500 officers.
Mm.
Well, that's a good note to go out on, a call for action. Anybody who's listening, you can always consider a career at the NOPD.
Well, thank you so much, Chief Riley,
welcome.
for actually joining us today. We really appreciated you sharing all of your insights and how it was being a superintendent of police immediately after Katrina. And that wraps up today's episode of the Monitor's Mic. I want to extend a heartfelt thank you to all our listeners for tuning in and staying engaged with the crucial conversations we're having about police oversight and community safety. Again, thank you, Chief Riley, for joining us today. And before we close, I do want to remind everyone about OIPM's 24/7 complaint hotline. It's operational every day of the year, and you can call or text 1-877-225-6476. The hotline is available in English, Spanish, and Vietnamese, and you can also file complaints through our website at www.nolaipm.gov in those same languages. No matter how you reach the hotline, you always have the option to file completely anonymously through that platform. And as always, if you missed any part of today's show and want to catch up on past episodes, visit our website at www.nolaipm.gov. And you can also find and follow us on YouTube at NOLA IPM, Instagram at NOLA OIPM, and Facebook at New Orleans Independent Police Monitor. Until next time, stay informed, stay involved, and stay committed to building a safer community. And this has been the Monitor's Mic.